Well, welcome to Uncut and Unfiltered Cosmetology Insights with Nathan Shaw, where we help aspiring and current beauty professionals like you master the business and the craft of cosmetology so that you can build a successful, long lasting career. Your guide is Nathan Shaw, a dedicated educator and working man's hairdresser who successfully built his schools from his earnings from behind the chair. And he generously shares his deep industry experience to challenge misconceptions and to teach you practical and crucial skills you need to manage your career, whether you're just starting or you're deep into your career. And today, we are going to talk about how to balance school and family. This is the blessing of a cosmetology school is it's shorter than most traditional four-year educations and offers some level of flexibility. So today, Nathan, we're going to talk about how to balance the most important thing in most people's lives, which is their family, and this new career for many of them. So thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Andy.
Well, a lot of women, folks involved in training, will be drawn to cosmetology because the schooling is shorter than a normal four-year degree, but they struggle to find time because of their current job or because of their own kids. What's the biggest misconception or thing that or worry that you dispel and say, "Hold on, don't worry, that won't be a problem," if you thought that? What's the biggest concern that you sort of can dispel quickly?
Probably the biggest concern would be just that they're not going to be able to manage both things. It's I always think everything's figure outable, which is not really right. But between some of the class or courses, as far as the schedules, there's different offerings that can work to where they can make both work.
Give me a quick practical example of the schedules. I mean, of making it work. Um, give me an example that you would think of right away that allows for that flexibility in people who have a family to get through school.
So we purposely kind of set up schedules for that purpose. A lot of people's families, moms have kids or wanting to go to cosmetology school or wanting to go back to school for cosmetology, and so we specifically have schedules that run just 8:30 through 2:30, so they can
Uh-huh.
get the kids off to school or to daycare, but also be home in time for their kids to get home for school or pick them up, well before daycare closes. But gives them that opportunity to still have the family time and almost like the school hours for their children. In fact, a
Yeah.
little shorter, so they can make sure they can get them to school and picked up as well.
Yeah. So that's great, that schedule. So on a day-to-day basis, there's that schedule of 8:30 to 4:30. Is there another large chunk or schedule, or are there people just do an afternoon or an evening option if they are busy during the day?
So currently we have three. We have the 8:30 through 2:30, and that's Tuesday through Friday. So they have basically a 3-day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Then there's 8:30 to 4:30, Tuesday through Friday, and then a 8:30 to 3 on Saturday. That's the most full-time schedule. That's the quickest to get through.
Okay.
But
So
we've
you're
also
adding 2 hours a day from Tuesday to Friday, and you're adding a Saturday session.
correct. Yeah,
Okay. So you're adding at least another day. Is that or a day and a half?
probably a little more than a day, exactly a day and a half.
Kind of time wise? Okay. Awesome.
Yep. And then we have another schedule that's just 3 days a week, and they get to go Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Wednesday and Friday are long days where they're actually there from 8:30 to 7, and Thursday still an 8:30 to 4:30. But that gives them 4 other whole days that they're not at school at all. Whether
Wow. Yeah.
they can work around that with their occupation that they currently
Right.
have, stuff like that.
I can see the appeal of all of those, right? I can see the draw for some people. Hey, I don't want to mess up my life that much. The rhythm. I got kids in school. I'll do 4 days a week. I'll do that where you kind of scrunch it in there. And then I also see the draw to the others. That's helpful. Tell me about um, is there a different success rate, or are people successful in all different? Are they more successful if they take one or the other, or do they all work for people?
I think they all work for people. I don't think there's one that's more successful than the others. Um, at the end of the day, it's kind of what fits in their life, right? The
Yeah.
only the only one we ever had real trouble with, and it wasn't that they couldn't be successful as a cosmetologist or a hairdresser, but we used to have just a night program for people that work full time during the day. The problem was that takes someone about 2 years of working all day, then going to school at night,
Oh,
the short night.
yeah,
And the success rate of people finishing was by far our lowest. And we ended up doing away with that schedule for that reason. It just,
yeah,
people would
yeah,
burn out, a year and a half in, and
yeah.
they still, like, I can't do another 6 to 12 months of like 13, 14-hour days. Right.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
if you're thinking about cosmetology school and you're listening to this, I would love for you to attend one of Nathan's schools. But think about the fact that you're going to give your best and most energy from the time you wake up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the day, and then the idea of working at night. I mean, obviously it can be done, but that's a you may be signing yourself up for failure by doing that, which is why Nathan's schools don't have that because they want you to succeed. So, what kind of work from a workload perspective, if you're doing that 8:30, let's just say 8:30 to 2:30, let's take that one. What kind of workload should people expect to bring home when they're doing that? What is the work outside of the work of school?
that's the great part. I mean, you do clock a lot of hours, so to speak, at cosmetology school, right? It's not like a traditional university where you're going to go take a lecture and then have, an
Yeah, I remember in
equivalent
school
for,
I'd have 3 hours of classwork, and that might be a busy day, or
yeah,
maybe 4 hours, but that's it, right?
yeah,
And then I had a bunch of homework,
yeah.
right?
So with cosmetology school, you usually don't have, I don't want to say any homework, but you shouldn't have any homework if you use school productively. And what I
Nice.
mean by that is, like, we obviously have time for theory because there is a theory portion where they have to go through the book work, learn anatomy, physiology, the chemistry of hair color, etc. You know, sanitation, all those types of things. Um, and if you might spend a little time at home studying for a test, especially I think people that, like, whether it's more test anxiety or, like, they want to make sure they're ready for the test, they might spend a little bit of time. But if they utilize the time they're actually in school, they usually have plenty of time to get their theory work done as well as the hands-on portion without taking it home.
Something that, and this is not in our notes, so, but I'm sure you'll be able to handle this one. One of the things that I find interesting is the people that I know that have gone to or been involved in any sort of cosmetology school, something they did not expect, but has been very, very, very obvious to them, and a huge bonus is the community, like the connections they have. And I was thinking about that in light of sort of the studying and such that if you use your time wisely at school, you're probably helping each other. You're studying with each other, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because there's a real camaraderie, I believe, of those who go to school together through cosmetology. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's always that groups of students that kind of start together or, like, get to know each other during school, that
Yeah.
they feel they're going to be friends for life, right? And
Yeah. A lot of
part of
them
that's
are.
that experience, and a lot of them are. Yeah, I mean, I think of you know decades ago now when I went to cosmetology school, there were a couple of girls that they actually went to the same high school together, knew each other, weren't really friends. Then they both started cosmetology school, and they became, like, very tight friends. And they're friends all these years later. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. Hey, I'm going to pause real quick. Make sure you're not bumping the table because I think it's coming through the microphone as like a vibration. So I'm not sure, like, if I bump my table like this, can you hear that in my mic?
yeah.
I'm not sure what it is.
It wouldn't have been my daughter. I'd heard her just turn on the blender downstairs. She made her
No, no, it's like a vibration coming through the mic. So I don't know if there's anything you're touching on your desk at all. But anyway, we'll be okay. It's small, but it's I don't know what it is. But we'll be okay. All right, let me go back to. Oh, okay, here we go. So, from your experience, which again you just said was decades ago, but you get to see this, live every day as a professional now running these schools. What are some things that you want to advise people on going into it about balancing life and school? What are things that they need to prepare for on a practical level, on a emotional level, on a relational level, so that they can really set themselves up to have a great school experience?
I think, I mean, not to oversimplify, I think number one, they've just got to be committed to the process, knowing like, hey, I'm signing up to go to school for this long. Plus, I have my regular life, and I've just got to get through that. And then the flip side of that, or the other side of that, I should say, is hopefully having a relationship, and whether it's family support system that's going to be there for them to help support them through it and actually encourage them rather than make it maybe more painful than it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So having those conversations beforehand. What are time management skills that you see people who succeed implement?
As far as time management, I think it's just picking that schedule, knowing, you know, what's going to work for your lifestyle. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you need to be there for your kids, that 8:30 to 2:30 might be best. And if you have a job that you're working full time, maybe the 3-day schedule is going to work best, and you can, work your job around that. I think it's really just practically thinking like, hey, what's going to work for this season of my life to help me be successful in accomplishing this.
Yeah. So how many of your students are able to do a full time and then do that 3 day? I mean, are a lot of people doing the 3 day? I mean, I'm thinking of people like even in medicine, these doctors and they work, 3 days, but they have 24-hour shifts or whatever. Thankfully, it's not that, right? Or even firefighters, I think they have that a lot where they like, I work 4 days straight and then I'm off for 3 days, right? And they live at the station or whatever. So what's it look like for someone if they're like, I can do 3 days? Like, okay, that sounds appealing. What's that like for them?
I think it depends on the person. It's funny, depending on the campus. We have three different locations. We've had definitely different types of enrollments, and
Yeah,
so like we have a couple campuses where almost no one picks the 3 day, and they're almost exclusively doing either the Tuesday through Friday
sure.
or the Tuesday through
Yeah,
Saturday.
yeah, yeah,
But then we have another one that we get a lot of the 3 day because people have other jobs that they can work around.
yeah,
Um, as far as what that looks like for them, I think most of them choose that for that reason. There's a few that choose it simply because they want to only go to school 3 days, which
yeah. That's another
I think
great one. Yeah.
yeah, that's great if that works for them. For me, it's a hard mental thing to think of because I've been in a hurry my whole life. I joke I wanted to, I passed childhood wanting to grow up too bad, right? And so for me, it's always like, how quick can I get through school? So for me, the 3 day schedule would be like, why would I want to take that long to graduate? Be out.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
but for some people, it works really great, and it really is a lifestyle choice.
yeah. So the people that you see be successful in that time, what are some behaviors when they walk through the door that you're like, this person's going to be successful because when they're here, they do this. So I'm thinking of someone, my son's graduating, in the next week from high school. He has friends who are very excited about going to cosmetology, and a young man that I mentored for a few years, he's in cosmetology now in school. What are the things that when someone walks through the door, you're like, okay, you're going to be successful if you have these habits? And I'm specifically asking about when they're on campus, when they're at the school. What are things that people do where you're like, you know what, you're going to be okay because you have these, we talked about attitude and things like that kind of beforehand, but once they're there, what are the things that make people successful?
It's just those that are engaged when they're at school. Because whether you're 8:30 to 2:30, that's still 6 hours. 8:30 to 4:30, I mean, it's not quite 8 hours because you have lunch and take a couple breaks. But the students that are engaged and actively learning, and what I mean by that, it's not just like having their head in the book. Yes, there's the theory portion, but obviously most of our career is a hands-on. It's a trade, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we try to keep them busy with clients as much as possible, but sometimes there's not always a client in their chair or at their bed if they're an esthetician or their nail table. But it's those that continue to practice on their mannequins. They're trying to master techniques that they struggled with, etc. Because some things come more naturally to people. And I remember a student in particular that like she really struggled with blow drying hair, like a nice blow dry with a round brush, for example. And she hated it because she wasn't good at it, but she would practice and practice on that when she didn't have guests on her mannequin. So she would become more proficient, and she actually got excellent at it and turned a weekness into a strength.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to encourage those who are listening as well, and then I would like for you to speak to this about how cosmetology school is different than a lot of the educational experience they've had up to that point. So when you think about, what are you doing for school? Again, we're in graduation time right now for my family. Uh, and I was talking to a young man and he said, I'm going to school to learn how to fix diesel engines. And I said, you know what? AI is not taking over diesel engine fixing anytime soon, buddy. So that's, jobs. And he's like, yeah, I already have a job. And he's like, I already work fixing engines. Now I'm just going to go to school to like learn how to do it better or whatever. You know what I mean? But, but the idea of it's, he's bored out of his mind at regular school. I mean, he's a very proud C student, meaning I passed. I'm out of here. Right? Uh, so how is the cosmetology it's different and more enjoyable for a lot of people that they should be excited. I mean, obviously they're excited because they want to do it, but it's like, no, this is awesome. You're going to love it. It's going to be hard, but you're going to love it. Right.
Yeah. So I think the big thing is it is hands-on. It's great for that student that, our traditional school system, if you think about it, it's kind of like a memorization thing, right? You got to memorize this so you can pass the test, or um, and this, you do have a theory portion you memorize, but most of it's like learning technical skills that you do
Yeah,
with
it's a
your hand
skill. Yeah.
and how to
Yeah.
execute them properly, right? And so that was one of the things that even kind of was a draw for me for cosmetology was, I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm. I grew up working physically with my hands, and I was like, school, I did well in school, but the sitting there all day was not something I loved. And so for me, I liked the idea of being on my feet, working with my hands, and being a little bit more actively engaged in work and not just memorizing things. So I love that because it's like, even though I struggled again, I hadn't done a bunch of hair before hair school. I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
but it was great because I could figure it out and I could learn it and I could practice it, and that was rewarding to be able to like see a finished result every time you had a client, or even if it was on a mannequin, you could see a finished result after an hour or 2 hours work.
I bet that's exciting too as a student to go and very quickly feel like I'm getting somewhere. And I get to see the finished product. Um, and sometimes you're like, oh, okay, well I got to get better at that. Sometimes the finished product is okay. What are we going to do better next time, right? But as I like to tell the person who always cuts my hair, like how short do you want to go? I go, well, I want to get my money's worth, and it's going to grow back. So get after it. You know what I mean? Meaning, like, that we're not doing permanent damage to people. It's satisfying, right? It's generally I get frustrated with my son because he goes and gets his haircut and he comes back. I'm like, dude, you didn't get your haircut. Like, literally looks the same. He's like, I had him take a little off. Whereas most people, they get to experience this satisfaction of like before and after. And imagine that like virtually every week of school, you just don't get that experience. I mean, how satisfying is it to like take a test and get it back and you like get a B? Okay. But that's a very different level of satisfaction than like, this person comes in, they look like this and they leave looking like that an hour later or 2 hours later. That's some pretty immediate satisfaction, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also very satisfying when you make someone's day. Like you literally can make someone's day with making them feel better about how they look, or just how they feel about how they look, right? And that's
Yeah.
the super rewarding part of it that I didn't internalize when I got into it, but actually doing hair, you're like, oh wow, you
Yeah.
impact people's day pretty heavily sometimes.
Yeah, and again, I'm not knocking those who do things like this for a living, but it's sort of like if you, make a spreadsheet or you send an email or whatever, put someone's order in a box and send it, are you helping people? Sure. But they're not going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Nathan, thank you so much for mailing me my package or, sending that email." Like
Yeah.
you're not going to get that feedback. There is a real emotional component, very real emotional component. Even like the last guy that cut my hair, I went in there and we didn't talk the whole time. And I left and I was like, "Thanks, bro." He's like, "No problem." That was it. But it was like guy to guy. I was like, I love that guy. I'm going to that guy again next time. You know what I mean? He did a great job. Our emotional connection was like unsatisfied, satisfied. You're fast. You're effective. You didn't make me talk about my feelings. We're good to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that's good. That's knowing your customer. I was in a bad mood that day. So I was like, thank you for reading the room, knowing I didn't want to talk to you, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't you, it was me. So what advice do you have for people's families on a really specific level for those? We'll end with this to help their student, and maybe they could just play this episode for them, and you could speak to the family of a student. If they said, "Hey, Nathan, I'm going to join your school, but can you talk to my husband, or can you talk to my kids, about or my parents?" Speak to those people.
You know, it's I tell them mainly just to support that student's dreams, right? And it sounds simplistic, but I'm amazed how often the people closest in our lives are sometimes not the most supportive of us winning, right?
Mm,
Sometimes in life you win and you want to like celebrate it. You win at something, and I'm not talking just like a game, but like you accomplish something and you share it because you're happy with someone that's close to you, and they can be very nonchalant or almost, feel like they don't care, or that sometimes even the opposite, where it's like you share it and you wish you hadn't because they're not, doesn't feel like they're rooting for you, right? And I know that sounds harsh, but I've seen that over and over. On the flip side, I've seen things like, when my daughter she went to our nail program, right? And I went in and let her do my nails and stuff. It's like, I don't want my nails done. I don't care. But they're in their model week, which means they go through foundations. They're working on their little fake hands and
huh,
learning the basics, and then we have them bring in models to practice on before they do strangers, right? And it was so cool because there was another guy in there, and he looked very blue collar, which
yeah.
and he was getting fake nails from his daughter.
Oh man,
You knew he didn't want the fake nails, but he was there supporting his daughter.
that gets
And
me
it's like
choked
stuff
up,
like
man.
that's like super
That's
heartwarming
awesome.
because you're like, he doesn't want those, but he wants his daughters to succeed, you know?
Well, he wants them
Yeah,
because he wants his daughter to succeed, right? He doesn't want
100%,
right, and
right?
it's like the things you'll. That's really cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And
Yeah,
and I
and
think
now
just
and then very quickly he's like, and now let's talk about removal.
yeah, let's
We
talk
got
about
him.
nail removal,
Cool, good job. I got to go to work. So
right?
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess the last thing I'll ask, because I'm just thinking of the person listening to this right now, might feel like, man, I'm guessing some people go to your school have kids. You speak to those who are thinking, man, can I still be a good mom when I go through school? I mean, should I put my kids through that where mom's gone? More. Speak to that person that's like, yeah, I would. I'm thinking about it, but I can't because I got kids. I got to be there for them. Speak to that person and those fears.
Yeah, I think it's a natural fear, especially for people that, your kids grow up fast, right? And you can feel like you're missing out on things. But I think it's great for that person to do things that, pursue some of their own interests and get that level of fulfillment so that when they're with their kids, they can even be more engaged. I feel, you hear a lot about like balancing work and family life, and I don't know if there's really such thing. I heard an analogy one time that I thought that was great. They said it's like your four burners on a stove. You have family and friends, you have work, or you have family, you have work, you have health, you have friends. And at different times in life, you got to turn one burner up more than the other, right? That doesn't mean you turn the others off, but it's like, it's also going to be like, hey, when I'm at school or at work, I've got to turn that burner up, but I'm going to turn that off and literally just turn it off when I get home and go full blast on family, right?
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
it's one of those deals that I know for me, and obviously I'm not everyone else, right? But like for me, like I was a better father, I feel like, when I was at home with my kids, when I was working hard at work, because I came home and I felt I'd accomplished something for me, even though yes, I used my work to also provide for my family. So when I was at home, I was able to be like, all right, now I'm going to be all in on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the fundamental problem with emptying yourself all the time for someone else is then you're empty. And there is a time where you need to go fill yourself up, and not in a selfish way, but you can't give out of what you don't have. And I understand the maternal instinct because we've got three kids, and my wife has got that instinct, and it's not a choice; it's an instinct. She just does. She just does. She just does, and she'll keep doing um, forever and ever because that's her instinct, but you can't give out of what you don't have. And I love the flexibility. I love the profitability potential of cosmetology for so many women because you don't have to do it 80 hours a week. You know, you can find a career path that fits for you and your family, and you can do that. And frankly, every person I've ever known, if through my cosmetology journey of just being a client, has had a family, and they're not like I never see them. I ask about their family, and they're like they obviously spend some time with them because they're talking about their kids.
Yeah.
And even the freedom of saying, yeah, I'm going to take this time off and go to lunch with my kid because I can. I just didn't schedule appointments over the lunch hour. There's a lot of very good things, but I can just imagine a lot of people listening right now. You're thinking, "Oh, my kids are young," and I just want to encourage you, invest in yourself, because when you invest in you, you have more to give to them, right? So
Absolutely.
that's one of the blessings and the opportunities that cosmetology can offer people, and it doesn't take 8 years to figure that out or to learn how to do it and get certified and licensed. So I want to point people to a link. If you're listening to this, whether it's you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to on any app, below the notes where we talk about sort of what happened today, and outline is there's going to be a link to a guide that Nathan and his staff created on how to choose the right school. And obviously, we would love for you to look at Nathan's schools as part of that option. But it goes into things like we talked about, even more detail than we talked about today. So check out that guide. There's no cost to it. And then when you have questions, you can contact Nathan's staff and they will answer your questions. They'd be happy to answer your questions. And, I was talking to that staff as we were creating that guide about like, well, how do you guys like do tours? And they're like, we stand up from our desk and we go, hey, let me go show you the school. And they want people to come. I know you guys want people to come in and look, but that's a great thing about technology. It's like, let me just go give you a virtual tour and then you can come in. And so there are people waiting to help answer your questions and concerns. And they've got great answers, and they're just dying to help you succeed. So if you're listening to this, there are people that Nathan employs as well as Nathan himself that they are for you. They're excited for you to call them. You're not bothering them. They're excited for you to reach out. And the first step is to download that guide, and there'll be a link in the notes. You put in your email, and boom, you'll have it 5 seconds later. So Nathan, thank you for helping create that guide, and thank you for your guidance today. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Andy.